Thomas Massie was interviewed by Tucker Carlson, and there's one part of this interview that I do want to highlight, and that is the discussion about AIPAC, right? And where a lot of these politicians are controlled by the Israeli lobby. Thomas Massie was very candid in this interview. Now, again, I don't agree with Thomas Massie on a lot of policy positions. But I do agree with him about AIPAC, the Israeli lobby, the war machine, and sending money overseas. Listen to what he says here. There is one segment during this part of the interview that went viral. I think they clipped it as like a short, and it really took off. So listen to this.
Last month, we voted like 15 or 16 times on issues related to Israel. And, I've been hit because I voted no on all of those.
Why because you hate Israel, or is there another reason?
No, because I'm against sending our money overseas. I'm against starting another proxy war. I'm against sanctions because it's going to weaken the dollar. I'm for free speech. Like, all of these resolutions run afoul of those things, and that's why I can't vote for them.
Tell us what the free speech part of it.
So recently they brought a bill to Congress, and this was actually a binding bill, not a non-binding resolution. Like, This was going to have the effect of law, and people would get, prosecuted if they engaged in anti-Semitism on campuses.
Pause for a second. Did you guys notice what Tucker Carlson said towards the very beginning of the interview? He's like, why? Why did you vote against those things? Because you hate Israel, right? So you see what he was doing there. So I am glad he pointed that out, though, for this reason. Because there's a lot of people applauding Thomas Massie for voting against this legislation. And I want you to understand, Thomas Massie is not voting against, arming Israel because he doesn't agree with what Israel is doing. He's not voting against it because he supports the Palestinians. He's voting against it because he's against US dollars being used overseas, whether it's through war, etc. So just understand that his reason for doing it would be different than my reason for doing that, right? Let's go on.
And the problem with this bill is they use some international definition of anti-Semitism on a website somewhere. My first question is, why don't you just put the definition in the bill? Why are you pointing to somebody's URL in a piece of legislation?
You are the Congress, right?
Right. We are the
Congress.
The laws. We should be. Instead, we're referencing a website, that's not even, hosted in the United States. And so I went to this website, and it's got a fairly short definition, but it's also got examples of things that would be considered anti-Semitism. And some of these are actually passages in the New Testament, if you will, would be banned by this international definition of anti-Semitism. For instance, saying that Jews killed Jesus, which is, in the Bible. He was not welcome among his own people. Okay. And so that would be anti-Semitism. And if you engaged in that on campus or just offered that as a thought, let's say in a classroom, you would be anti-Semitic, and you would run afoul of the Department of Education and some federal laws. And, there were other examples in there that were hard.
Let me pause and talk about that example for just a second. So that means you would not be able to talk about the Bible, right? So you wouldn't be able to talk about, and I said this too. I said, okay, so what does that mean for churches? How many of you grew up in the church? How many of you grew up Christian? How many? Anybody in the chat? How many of you grew up in the church and that's what you were taught in the church? So what does that mean about churches? That's what I said when they were trying to pass that piece of legislation through Congress. And I said, oh, wait a minute. And I was looking at the list that they had there that we're no longer allowed to do. And I said, okay, so are all the Christian churches going to close? What? Like, see, Victor grew up in the church, him. Okay. Fight Back was. So a lot of us know, so like, I think a lot of people are asking, how far is this going to go, right? A little bit more.
To believe, for instance, comparing the policies of Israel to the Nazi regime would be anti-Semitic. But the question is, what if their policies ever became the same? Is this a static definition?
Or what if we just have different opinions and your opinion is now a crime?
Right. I mean even if it's abhorrent,
even if it's wrong and stupid.
yeah, it's still legal. It should be.
You may have come to the obvious conclusion that the real debate is not between Republican and Democrat.
Let me pause that part. I want to come back to another part here, because I don't think you guys really wanted to see that part. I want to get to the AIPAC part here, because that's important. I mean, like, what does that mean for religion, etc.? Okay, right about here. Let's get to the AIPAC piece. Oh, Twitter, don't do this to me. I hate when you do this. At least I got the timestamp, but it's annoying. This is something I think Twitter does need to work on, is their refreshing their skill set here. Let me go back.
Writing terms
Estimate
in front of Congress and make us vote on them, whether they're going anywhere in the Senate or not. And they want to split the Democrats. They want to show that Republicans are united and then split the Democrats. That's one of the reasons they do it. Another reason they do it is there's a foreign interest group called AIPAC that's, got the ear of this current speaker and demanded 16 votes in April on Israel or the Middle East. We haven't had 16 votes in April on the United States.
Listen to that word, demand. That AIPAC demanded 16 votes on Israel in the Middle East. They didn't ask, they didn't request, they demanded. So it's okay for a foreign Israeli lobbyist group to make demands of our politicians, but it's not okay for us to make demands of our politicians. So you see, this is something where we should do. We should make demands. This is why I say you shouldn't vote for someone just because. So we have the lobby making demands of the politicians. Everybody let that sink in.
Congress.
So what's AIPAC?
AIPAC is the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. And they didn't start out as a PAC in the sense of a political action committee, but now they have a political action committee. Ostensibly, it's a group of Americans who lobby on behalf of Israel. They're for anything Israel. And they're a very effective lobbying group. They get in there. They try to get me to write a white paper as a candidate, for instance, for Congress. They almost get
on what?
On Israel. Like,
pause for a second. So why are Americans lobbying for another country? Because last time I checked, Israel was not the 51st state. Why are American citizens lobbying for another country? And how is this okay? I don't see nobody lobbying for any African countries. Let's pay attention. Do we have Americans in this country lobbying for Sudan, Egypt? No, it's Israel. Nobody's lobbying for Russia. That shouldn't even be allowed. That should be illegal to do. All for money.
And I wouldn't do it. And he said, why? And I'm like, I don't do homework for lobbyists, right? I'm like, I didn't like writing term papers at college. I'm not writing one for you.
What did they say?
They said, oh, well, here, just copy Rand Paul's term paper and put your name on it. We'll accept that. And I'm like, no, I'm still not cribbing somebody else's homework to do homework. I'm not turning in my homework for you. And what? You're laughing, but you know what? I bet I may be the only Republican in Congress who hasn't done homework for AIPAC. And it's just what it is. It's conditioning. They want you to do something very simple and benign, and for them, they don't really grade your term paper. They just want to know that you'll do something for them, and if you'll do something for them as a candidate, you're more likely to do something for them as a congressman when you get in there. So
So like I said, they approach them early on. And this is what I was telling Jose Vega about earlier. This is what they do. They approach you early on. They try to get them when they're candidates. They don't wait until they get into office, but that doesn't stop them from poaching ones that they may have missed, right? So they may look over and look past Jose right now, but let's say Jose does beat Richie Torres, then they would try to come after Jose as well. Yeah, they're like stalkers.
My rift started out in 2012 when I refused to turn in an Israel term paper.
And how did they respond to that?
Well, they kind of got in my race a little too late there in the beginning, and because it was hard to tell that I was actually going to win. And when they saw I was going to win, that's when they tried to get me to do the term paper. They didn't have a political action committee at the time. They couldn't spend hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars against me at that time. It was just sort of like a whisper campaign to try to, hey, don't vote for him, blah, blah, blah.
Because why?
Because at that point, they sensed I wouldn't do what they wanted when I got
But what did they
Congress.
whisper against you? What were they saying about you?
Well, they would do it through, for instance, churches, evangelical churches. They've got an organization called Christians United for Israel, where they sort of co-opted evangelicals. People think it's a grassroots movement in Kentucky. It's actually a top-down movement from AIPAC. So,
and that's a trick that other organizations have done as well, right? So they'll have there's like a big umbrella, and there are smaller groups or organizations under an umbrella of an organization. And the smaller groups will pretend like they are grassroots, or they'll say that they're a grassroots organization, when in reality, if you follow the money trail, you'll see that they're attached to a corporate organization. They are up under that umbrella. So I'm familiar with that. So that's what Thomas Massie is discussing there. So he's saying even the evangelical Christian group in Kentucky, they are attached to AIPAC. So they even got groups within the Christian churches. That's how big and how deep this organization runs.
so that people who aren't even Jewish will feel like they've got to support Israel, no matter what. And even if it's a secular state that funds abortions, they, just sort of forget that part, and we've got to fund Israel. So they have networks. So it's more than just about the money.
But that speaks to the two-party hypocrisy there. That speaks to the partisan hypocrisy. If you support such and such party because you are against, a woman's right to choose, but at the same time, you are supporting AIPAC, which is representing a state that supports the woman's right to choose, you're hypocritical. And that's the danger about partisan politics. That's the danger about being a part of the two-party system.
You get elected despite their efforts. And then what happens? Do you talk to them after that?
And by the way, let me just put a little footnote here. I'm not against Israel. I've never voted to sanction Israel. I've never said anything particularly, critical of Israel,
So do you see what's happening here? So Thomas Massie is not even, taking money from AIPAC. He's not even funded by AIPAC. But notice how when he is criticizing AIPAC, notice how he comes in to let everybody know, by the way, I'm not critical of Israel. I'm not trying to sanction Israel or anything like that. It's almost a sense of nervousness in his voice when he says that. Now, I take it as this way. You one of the few that's not taking money from AIPAC. Why do you feel the need to say that? Why not? Why you can't be critical? Why do you have to say that? So Thomas Massie may not be in bed with the Israeli lobby, but yet he's still controlled by the very lobby, in a sense, the very powers that be that he's not even a part of. And they still have some type of control over him. Listen to what he just said. Wait a minute. By the way, I'm not critical of Israel. I'm not this, I'm not that.
Other than, for instance, right now they're bombing, they've killed 1% of the civilian population in Gaza. That's concerning to me. But so what do they do now?
You get elected 2012. Do you hear from them again?
I vote my conscience, which they won't tolerate. So they ran with their 501c4 before they had a super PAC. They were running educational advocacy ads against me, saying that, you know, I'm bad on Israel. They didn't say don't vote for him. They just said he's a bad guy. And so I said, all right, well, you're not welcome in my office anymore, because for years I invited him into my office. Let's talk this through. Let me explain to you. I'm a libertarian leaning Republican. I don't vote for foreign aid for anybody. So don't be offended when I don't vote for your foreign aid. I don't vote for wars anywhere. So don't be offended if I do that. I'm for free speech, even if it's abhorrent. And, you know, we used to talk, but now they're banned from my office. The situation went from bad to worse.
So did you hear what he just said? He said that they used to talk, but now they're banned from his office. So even Thomas Massie, even though he's against, like, you know, sending like foreign aid, Thomas Massie still left the door open for them to come in and sit down. He still left the door open for AIPAC to come in and have a seat and let's have a conversation. Because for me, the door would not be open. The door is not open. The door is closed. There's nothing that I need for you to come and sit down and talk to me about if you're asking me to support an organization that represents a foreign entity, right? So if I already know this and I know I'm not supporting foreign aid abroad, why do you need to come in and have a conversation with me? I don't need to have a conversation with you. There's nothing we really need to talk about. We don't need to pick up the phone. We don't need to send no text messages. I don't need no emails. We don't need to tango. I'm not trying to have a beer with you. That's it. Plain and simple. That's it.
This election cycle, they spent $400,000 against me, $90,000 last fall running TV ads in my district and Facebook ads and whatnot, trying to equate me with the squad. And then this most recently, and in fact, as I'm speaking to you today, even though my election is over, they're still running hundreds of thousands of dollars of negative ads.
It's a little weird, though, because as you said, you're probably the only Republican in the House who hasn't done homework for them, who isn't on their side. And that's okay. I mean, you can have, you know, you're a libertarian oriented Republican from Northern Kentucky. You're probably not going to single-handedly determine our foreign policy. So I think you should, but you don't.
Thank you.
And you're not going to. So why do they care? Why not just let Thomas Massie be Thomas Massie in Northern Kentucky? Like, why the need to crush you?
I don't know. I think they don't want one horse out of the barn. If one person starts speaking the truth, they're afraid it could be contagious, perhaps. Or it's like a new car. They go to Mike Johnson and they say, we want a Cadillac, you know, Escalade with pearl white paint. And here's the rims we want. And Mike Johnson puts that bill on the floor. It passes with a unanimous vote, except for one guy votes no. And I think they feel like it's a scratch on their car. They wanted a brand new car and it got scratched by this guy named Massie. They were going to drive it over to the Senate and ask for unanimous consent. But now the senators are saying, wait, why this wasn't unanimous in the House? Why should we do it unanimously in the Senate? And it starts raising questions. And I think that's why they get mad.
This is too funny. I'm sorry. Tony Banana says Massie is the Bowman of Republicans. I can see that.
What I find interesting is that it's not just that they disagree with your views, which they do, and I think they have an absolute right to disagree with anybody's views. We all do. But they've called you a bigot, and they call you an anti-Semite, and say you're a hater and try to destroy your character. That seems like a very different level of response to me.
Right. There's no need to do that. I'm not anti-Semitic. I don't have an anti-Semitic hair in my head. Okay. I mean, I don't like AIPAC anymore. Like I used to be neutral toward AIPAC, right? But I have no antagonistic feelings toward Jewish people. I am the last thing. I think I'm probably the least xenophobic person in Congress. I mean, these are the guys that my colleagues want to sanction everybody, declare them terrorist states, come up with these strongly worded resolutions. I don't vote for any of that crap, right? Unless somebody does harm to me, I'm not going to call them anything. So I get called names just for staying out of all of this political posturing.
That's disgusting, though, isn't it?
I guess
attack your character. They can disagree with your views, right. but to call you like the worst thing you can be in America, like that's disgusting.
I have a thick skin.
Yeah, apparently.
And here's the good news, Tucker. My constituents aren't falling for it. 2 weeks ago, I just had a primary and got 76% of the vote, with AIPAC running hundreds of $1,000s of ads. So it's not working against me. I think it's short-sighted on their side to do this. They're just burning money, but they're trying to make an example of me.
But they're also exposing their weakness.
I think they are. I think they've exposed a real weakness here. And, it used to be just me voting against some of these resolutions, but recently where they tried to ban passages in the New Testament, I think we got like almost 24 Republicans who said, wait, hold on there.
Wait, can I ask a question, though? Just a fundamental question. So the Biden administration has put a bunch of people in jail for violating something called FARA, the Foreign Agent Registration Act, 1936-ish. It's been on the books for, 90 years. And it's never been enforced ever until recently, until really the Trump era and Biden era. So, but the law requires people who lobby on behalf of foreign governments to register. It's that simple. And this is the largest lobby most effective lobby in the United States on behalf of a foreign government. Are they registered with FARA?
They're not, but they should be.
Well, how can that be? How can they put Paul Manafort in jail, which they did, on a FARA violation, and a bunch of other people in jail on FARA violations, but the largest and most effective and most feared foreign lobby working for a foreign government doesn't have to register under the law? That's insane.
I just want to remind everyone that was something that JFK did want to change. I talked about this with journalist Rick Sterling. He wrote an article for Mint Press News a couple of months ago, actually. He had uncovered, or they had actually released some more JFK documents, and it showed that JFK actually did want, at that time, it was a different name. It wasn't AIPAC back then. It was a different name, but he wanted it to register as a foreign agent. That was right before he was killed. Doobie.
Oh man, don't make me take their side, but I'll explain as best as I can what they're arguing.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we should take their side. I don't know.
Well, I'm going to agree with you in a second, but let me at least offer what I think is their argument. They would say we are Americans. The members of AIPAC are Americans, and that they have the right to free speech.
Paul Manafort's an American.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So there's the good rebuttal, as FARA applies not to foreigners, to foreign agents, right? Of foreign principles, agents of foreign principles.
It's Americans lobbying on behalf of foreign governments.
Correct. So AIPAC is exactly what FARA is meant for. Now they would say, and we have a First Amendment right. Okay. Well, I agree with you there, but we also have election laws, and it's disclosure, right? FARA doesn't say you can't say Thomas Massie's, an ignorant hillbilly. You're allowed to say that if you want to, but we just want to check where your money's coming from. Tell us where it's coming from, what you're spending it on, and if you are lobbying on behalf of a foreign country. So they should be, now to your point, they should be registered with FARA. This is what FARA is where there's gray area, where it's an American representing a foreign country. Yes. Let's look and see if you're getting any money from that foreign country. Are you a dual citizen with that foreign country?
That's a good point. And that's what I wanted to bring up as well. What about the dual citizenship? So yeah, you can be an American, but you can have dual citizenship. So if you have dual citizenship between America and Israel, that's why I still say this as well. I don't think people that have dual citizenship should be able to serve in Congress. I don't think if you have a dual citizenship, you should be able to be president of the United States. No, I don't, because I think you're putting tricky situation there, right? Because again, at the end of the day, 9 times out of 10, who are you going to be loyal to? If there was ever any type of conflict between the country that you live in right now and the country you have a dual citizenship with, whose side are you going to take? Who are you going to side with? Or in the position with Israel, there are a lot of people that have dual citizenship with Israel, right? And you look at the war between Israel and Gaza, well, actually Israel's assault on Gaza that's happening right now. Of course, the people that have that, most of the people that have that dual citizenship with Israel, whose side are they going to take? They're going to take Israel's side because they got that dual citizenship. So, I mean, the thing is to me, it is a conflict of interest. And I think AIPAC should have to register as a foreign agent.
Are you being directed by, for instance, is Netanyahu speaking to your group, advising you on your next move? Are you getting money from the military industrial complex? Like, because to understand AIPAC, I think it's easiest to model them as a military industrial lobby. Like, their biggest thing is they want more equipment, more military equipment from the United States going to Israel. In fact, when they used to be allowed in my office, the argument they would make is, oh, we're just stimulating the U.S. military industrial complex because every single penny of the 3.8 billion that they nominally get, now they're getting way more than that, but that Israel nominally gets goes to U.S. military contractors. Now, that didn't make me warm and fuzzy, okay? But that is their argument. And if you notice what they advocate for, I think sometimes they advocate for things that even Israelis wouldn't advocate for.
Oh, I believe that.
Like they would, I think, be okay with a war with Iran, like an all-out, apocalyptic war with Iran. Whereas there are people in Israel say, "Whoa, hold on a second, we'd rather not have a war with Iran." But AIPAC does things that lead us in that direction, and so they're kind of like what the NRA is to gun owners, AIPAC is to Israel, or what the Farm Bureau is to farmers, AIPAC is to Israel. In other
represents
words,
a faction.
Right. They represent a faction, but usually a corporate faction that, and they're using the imprimatur of grassroots that they've diluted or confused into bullying congressmen. And the NRA does that, and Farm Bureau does that. I'm picking on some, other right-wing groups here.
But the NRA does not represent Israel. I think the difference is AIPAC is solely Israel. And that is problematic. And more people should be calling this out. And if it wasn't for the money, and this is the thing, like, why is this allowed to happen? Money. You scratch our back, we'll give you money. We'll guarantee that you'll win re-election. We'll make sure we'll pour out as many ads against your opponent as possible. Most of the time it works. Sometimes it doesn't. Thomas Massie, has gotten lucky. It hasn't worked against him. But that's because he has at least a strong enough base of constituents that want to continue to support him. But the reality is AIPAC is controlling too damn much. And it is really a mess that an organization that is basically, like I said, it is a foreign agent based on the definitions that I've seen about AIPAC and what they do representing Israel. It's crazy that an organization like that in this country has so much power and control over other organizations in this country and corporate interests and our politicians. That's insane. Now, if AIPAC wants to go over to Israel and reside there and do as much for Israel as they can in Israel, they have a right to do that. But what I would argue they really should not have a right to do is to do that for Israel in this country. They are more than welcome to hop on a plane and go over there to Israel and champion for Israel as much as they want to. But you should not be able to do that in this country. That is another country. We wouldn't let this happen with any other country. You think our government would go for this if someone tried to lobby for China in this country and tried to make it as big as AIPAC? What about Russia? No, I don't think so. But things are starting to fade, because I want to show you what Code Pink did. Because they're approaching people at these AIPAC retreats. Shout out to Medea Benjamin for this. We just disrupted an AIPAC staff retreat in DC. Yeah, because you see, these people, they're everywhere. They're everywhere. Look.
How does it feel to be somebody that is killing thousands and thousands of babies in Gaza? It is not right, and you know it's not right. We can't keep doing this. You can't keep destroying the lives of people, and you're destroying the American system by throwing the money around.
AIPAC kills. The blood of the Palestinian people are on your hands. The blood of the Palestinian
genocidal freaks is what you are. You
You
are all murdering Palestinians. Shame on every single one of you.
You have
Bunch
to
of
stop
genociders.
destroying our democracy, throwing money around to destroy the careers of people who only want to stop the killing, the slaughter, the genocide. It is genocide, whether you believe it or not. It is genocide that is happening. How can you watch the slaughter? 4 hostages released, that's good. But it was 274 Palestinians killed. Doesn't that break your heart? Don't you think there's some other way, like a ceasefire?
Palestine will be free, and Zionism will end. I promise you that.
And you know what kills me about her?
AIPAC does not speak for us, even if they're funding and own our government.
Stop supporting genocide!
Stop supporting genocide.
Stop supporting genocide!
You know what killed me about this? It had to be the black guy, right? Look at this. They had to get a black guy to be the one to push them out every time, right? We always got to be the ones up in the front, but that wasn't all of them. There was another one that Code Pink did again, because I'm showing you how people, I feel like Israel has lost the narrative. I feel like they've lost their information war. And I think people are seeing right through Israel and the Zionist project, right? So it says here, we disrupted Jake Sullivan. He's the senior national security advisor. So check out this one as well. And he's speaking at an Israeli lobby forum. So again, peeps, why the hell is the national security advisor speaking at an Israel lobby forum? Why the hell is the national security advisor speaking at any lobby forum, period? Why is he there? All about money.
Jake, thank you for being here with us today. We know
Jake Sullivan, you are a war criminal. 15,000 people, 15,000 kids dead is not self-defense. Jake Sullivan, you are a war criminal. Jake Sullivan, you are a war criminal. 15,000 kids, 15,000 children dead is not self-defense. 15,000 children dead is not self-defense. 15,000 children dead is not self-defense. 15,000. Jake Sullivan, you are a war criminal. Jake Sullivan, you are a war criminal. 15,000 kids dead is not self-defense. Stop the genocide. Jake Sullivan is aiding and abetting war crimes. Stop the genocide. Stop the genocide. You are not speaking for the Jewish people.
It's not self-defense.
Everybody see it again? Look, who is the one that escorts them, that gets rid of them? Another, right? Is always a black person, right? See what I'm saying? He the only security guy. Actually, is he even security? He not dressed like security. See what I mean? You see who trying to push? Okay.
It's not self-defense. Jake Sullivan is a war criminal.
We're outside the American Jewish Committee's global forum where the senior national security advisor to President Biden, Jake Sullivan, was speaking, and we were in there saying that this is not the United States of Israel, that 15,000 Palestinian kids dying and being murdered by US-backed bombs and money is not self-defense.
We thought it was important to go in front of an audience of many thousands of people of Jewish faith to say that Jewish values are not mass murder, that Israel is committing mass murder, and Jake Sullivan is a war criminal.
Shout out to Medea Benjamin and other activists at Code Pink, because again, Medea is everywhere all the time. But I will say, you know, you think about that interview with Tucker Carlson and Thomas Massie, and you see what Medea Benjamin's doing. Again, like, I want you to see the difference between the two. Thomas Massie is not saying he has a problem with Israel per se. He's not saying that he supports the Palestinian people. Thomas Massie is not out there trying to protest against AIPAC. He just doesn't want our money going to foreign countries. So I want you to see the difference between the two. Medea and Code Pink, they are there protesting because of what Israel is doing. Yeah, she got a problem with the money too, but she more importantly has a problem with what Israel is doing. So don't conflate the two, because I've seen people online saying, thank you so much, Thomas Massie, for doing da 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 da. He's not doing it for the same reason. So I think it's important that we understand that.